Okay, we've had a lot of people ask about our flip farms and why we did it and how we did it. So here's the first crack at one of them. This was our first flip farm. And believe me when I tell you, when I took Mrs. Kapper to see this one, I mean, she didn't even want to go and look for the showing. She wanted to turn around and go home. And I convinced her, I'm like, babe, see past the ugly. Past the ugly. This is what I saw. This is a 35-acre piece at the very end of a dead-end road. And it also had some high ground, it had some low ground in the woods, and it butted up against that bayou, which was literally like gold. The previous owners had no idea how valuable that was, but as you will see, we took advantage of that. So then we went for the second showing, and the adult kids actually sabotaged the showing. They sat out there smoking cigarettes. They were supposed to be gone because they didn't want us buying it for mom, who they were dependent on. That's how this whole thing started. So these pictures I'm going to show you are all before and after pictures, kind of in sequence, so you can see firsthand the changes that we're able to make. First thing was the old barn. This barn was literally in tear down condition, but after we assessed it and had a builder come in and look at it, we figured it was worth the salvage. So I had a builder come in and basically boost up the structure underneath, which you'll see in a minute, put T111 siding on the whole thing, strengthen it, and then Mrs. Kapper painted the whole thing. And just look at the before and after. It turned out to be absolutely beautiful, and a lot of people actually came down the dead end just to look at that barn after we finished it, knowing how bad it was before. So this was also the place where we had our first animals together. We had chickens, which was quite the learning experience, and they were a lot of fun. We also grew some pigs for the first time and most likely the last time ever. But we did it, and now we can say we've done it, and we can move on in our country living adventures. Mrs. Kapper wanted the rooster on the barn to add a little class, and of course her flower wheelbarrow here, which matched very nicely. So here's the barn before. The barn literally had about 24 inches of hard pack manure in it across the entire floor. I'm not kidding you. It took us and the kids, they were teenagers at the time, it took us quite a while to pick away at that and get down to the actual concrete floor. But we did. They put some new joists on to support the floor and the upper unit, and then this is what it turned out in the end. A little bit of paint, a lot of elbow grease, and some new light bulbs, and it just made a world of the difference. Here's the pole barn. This thing didn't have any functional doors. This also had about a 6-inch layer of dirt on the entire floor, and it was in very rough condition, and it was just full with junk and garbage. I mean, we literally brought several dumpsters worth out of this thing. So we were trying to minimize our cost here, so we did one new overhead door, actually two new overhead doors, I believe, that big one and the small one. I got new openers in it, got all up and running and functional. We kind of hodgepodge patched the little window and door there just so it would work and functional. Oh yeah, I also had to do some groundwork in there because all the water was running right into the barn. They did not have it graded properly when they put the barn in, so I had to fix that entire front grading as well. This was a little extra bonus garage. Again, this was close to tear down condition, but we tackled this one ourselves. Basically replaced the siding that was damaged and broke, and put a new overhead door on it. We put new shingles on it and then painted it, put this little rustic fence on it, and it turned out quite well for a secondary building. Then came the home. It was a double wide on a hilltop there. Had a beautiful view out back, but it needed a little TLC inside, so we went to work on this. We started out on the back. They had a rickety old deck. We ended up tearing it up and putting a nice new deck on it. And Mrs. Kapper really didn't like this setup, so we tore all this fencing down and all that lattice and stuff, ripped all that out, cleaned all the weeds out of there, and basically just tried to make this look more presentable, if you will, including that front porch. So on the interior, Mrs. Kapper went to work and she did her normal planning with a zone map, and this is what it looked like when we first bought it. It was really cluttered quite badly. So she painted the entire home to give it an entire new fresh look. And we got new carpeting. Actually, before the carpeting, we had to actually kills the floor because it had dog pee all over it. So we had to let it all dry out. We bleached the entire floor, put a layer of kills on it to dry out and get rid of all that dog pee and then the smoker smell in the home. And then everything in it was new. We did all new. Any soft furniture was brand new because everything in the home that was fabric had that absorbed smell of smokers and stinky animals, so it was quite bad. But it turned out quite well. These are all the after pics here. And it was quite a budget project too. We really learned a lot, and we really tried to limit how much cash we put into this because we knew this one was a temporary stop. And in temporary, I mean that it was a more affordable farm, if you will, for having that kind of a land where we could enjoy land in our backyard, okay, and have it where we live at the same time and not like a hunting camp. So yeah, these two front buildings here, these were tear down things. So I hired an excavator to come and tear down the building, and a scrapper came and scrapped all the metal from this mobile home, and then the rest of the wood we burned out and back. And we had several big bonfires on this property because we tried to minimize the dumpster costs. So anything that was just basically wood, we burned that, but everything else we got rid of. So here's some pictures of the land. It was actually quite beautiful. Of course, I went in there and did a lot of work and made it what I thought was more beautiful with some beautiful crops and food plots, and made it a little more private. And what I mean by private, you'll see here in a few slides, but it was a really beautiful piece of land, and that's what I really focused in on and tried to get Mrs. Kapper to focus in on. So I also went to work on the deer hunting aspect and the wildlife, started putting food plots in, and then I came in and I spayed these rows of blue spruce, Colorado spruce, and that to make it a little more private back there, and it turned out quite well. Put some soybean plots, some corn plots, and we had a good time deer hunting on that property. This was an Artesian Well, which was kind of unique. It ran basically all year long. And just another picture of the field before I got to it. Started doing some tractor work, and the woods were actually quite nice. There was some nice lowland woods there with some nice maples, some nice hickories, some oak spread in there. So it was a nice mix on the land. It was about half wooded and half high ground, to where we had some options on what we could do with that property. There's a lone hickory there that was really pretty out in the middle of the field. There was even some birch mixed into the lowland woods, which made it really pretty as far as woods go. And here's a kind of look at one of the old fences. This is just beautiful right here. And picturesque. I mean, this is what you think of on an old farm. A pretty fence row with old posts and kind of mix of fescue grass, because they did have horses. It was just really pretty. So the home had a Johnson wood burner, which needed a lot of work. I needed to have someone come in and rerun the hoses because they weren't done properly. We put this little wood shed up here so it was easier to store wood, to more efficiently use that wood burner. And then there was the bayou. This place was beautiful, and man, did we make a lot of memories out of it. There was a lot of big bass, a lot of big northern in the bayou. We got ourselves an old rowboat. We managed to drag it back there through the woods. And man, I'm going to tell you, we had some fun and we made some memories. And the previous owners, I mean, they had no idea the gold mine they had in that bayou. I mean, they just thought it was like a muddy swamp and didn't even take advantage of it. And of course, the kids got exposed to a lot more wildlife and exploring and that kind of thing, getting them a little bit away from video games and so forth. So here's my good friend Arlo. I remember this day, man, we just caught 6 or 7 big ones like this on an afternoon, and it was all topwater because it was weedy and it was shallow. And man, did we just slay them on the topwater. We just had a blast. I do kind of miss that, I will tell you that. And then Sharon's boy shot his first deer ever with a bow on that piece of property, so it was fun that way. My son shot 2 nice bucks off of there. And of course, I had some duck hunting on my own property there as well. And one of my friends is like, "You're nuts to leave it." And sometimes I think about that, but the climate was just really harsh. And the kids had their friends over, and they enjoyed the fishing as well on the bayou and having fun. This was a look from my duck blind that I had back there. To have this in your backyard was just incredible. And the theme I want to relay here is that this was a property that was a diamond in the rough. And most other people just couldn't understand why we wanted it. But when we were able to show people what it could be instead of what it was, then everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, that was the best property you ever got." So when you're out looking for property, keep an eye out for what it could be, not what it is, and use your imagination. So this is the first of probably a series of these we'll do. Comment below, let me know how you like it. I appreciate it. And until next time, stay tuned to Kapper Outdoors.